Greetings, knights and knaves, lords and ladies, 'tis I, your Lord Commander, and welcome to a brand new series that I like to call Nightlife, or in other words, How to Be a Better Man. Now, before we get started, I feel it is absolutely important to tell you guys this advice, quote unquote, does not come from a place of judgment, but rather from the perspective of someone who is still on their journey through manhood. You know what I'm saying? Like, even as a 23-year-old man myself, I'm still kind of figuring shit out. We all have our journeys to make, and we are all at different stages of our journey, and this series is supposed to be a bit of big brother advice for our fellow man and knight. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into the discussion. Now, before we can begin building ourselves into better men, we must first deconstruct the idea and image of what a man is in today's society. A few days ago, I asked a bunch of the men in my life the same set of philosophical questions. What would you consider is the current view of what a man is in society today? And what is our role in life? Is the general view positive or negative? What aspects contribute to that view? And honestly, they've got some very interesting things to say. One of my closest friends from high school and in my first year in college said, first, everyone's view is different. I see a man as someone who can take care of themselves and loved ones, without putting them in danger or sometimes an awkward situation. I think my role in life is to try and take care of myself and enjoy my life. I think of it as a timeline actually, and I set goals like I want to have a house and I want to retire at 45. Not gonna lie though, I thought and a few times tried to end it, but people around me helped me stay focused on the positives of life. For starters, I just want to point out that the ability to be absolutely vulnerable in that moment with me after not really having like communication or open communication over time, especially over the past couple of years, was very like powerful, was very moving in my opinion. Not to get like too sappy or anything, and of course, you know, I'm going to keep their identities a secret out of respect for these individuals and everything like that. I don't want to be putting their information or personal lives out there on blast for the internet and everything like that. But nonetheless, he brings up some very good points. You know, for starters, the fact that everybody's viewpoint is different, which I completely agree with. You know, the ability for him to even consider that there are differences of perspectives depending on the population in which you're referring to. So if I was talking to a group of gamers about philosophy, chances are they're not going to give a shit. And if I talk to a group of philosophers about video games, chances are they're not going to give a shit. But, you know, it's just a matter of perspective, I suppose. Maybe that came out a little wrong. It kind of makes sense in my head, but y'all let me know. Anyway, moving on. Another response was, that's easy. It's power alpha seeking untrustworthy sacks of shit. So much stereotypes of men are not good. I believe a man's role is to provide, be the first line of defense, but should not be ashamed if he is more of a support role. Some women are built different, lol. I believe the view is negative. It's unfortunate, but with media and just the majority of men in general, they're not helping our case, in which I completely agree. I feel like exposure to public media sites and like these not gender normative, but I suppose that makes sense as well. But these social norms that just kind of like build walls and barriers between men as individuals, you know? Like, you're not considered a man unless you have this kind of house or this kind of job, making this much money, if you're not wearing these kinds of clothes, so on and so forth. And those are just very specific situations. You know, of course, everything in life is much more situational and can't really be generalized into these, you know, big, broader subjects, because not all of these situations will apply to everybody. You know what I'm saying? But either way, like I said earlier, perspectives. And this one from a very close coworker of mine, or ex-coworker I suppose, whose opinion I hold in very high esteem, very high regard. He said, honestly, in today's society, the definition of what a man is varies depending on the social group you ask, which also means the role would change as well. At the moment, though all of this is willingly allowed to be decided by women, not the men themselves. Now, that being said, the different groups having different definitions have left most, if not all men, scratching their heads and saying, what the fuck, as they try to make sense of where they actually fall in society, in the society they struggle to be a part of. However, is just my opinion. I'm sure others view it differently. And again, the fact that they brought up differences in perspectives is just absolutely 100% accurate. Everybody's going to view things at different perspectives in life. And most of the time it's a product of like their surroundings. You know, those surroundings kind of influence the way that they think based on the way that others around them think, or their personal experiences and the situation they find themselves in as life goes on. And I just think it's a very interesting concept that these, you know, men that I have in my life and that I hold into very high esteem were able to come to that conclusion so easily. It made me honestly a little ashamed to think of the genuine responses that I thought I was going to receive. You know, these ones were much more sincere, I believe, than the ones that I originally thought. But nonetheless, very good responses from a few of the gentlemen in my life. So I appreciate you guys very much. I hope me sharing this doesn't insult you in any way. But if it does, you know, for sure, just let me know. Not a lot of my friends outside of the YouTube community watch my YouTube videos anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, just brings up some very interesting topics. Now, in another one of these conversations with one of my friends, we talked on the phone for a couple of hours, and he too had some very interesting things to say. He believes that, for lack of a better word, men in society today really get shit on. And I would tend to agree if it weren't for his reasoning behind it. Now, let me explain. He places the blame for this negative sentimentality towards men solely on women. And he exerts a lot of, you know, toxic masculinity, fragile masculinity. You know, oh, so-and-so was talking to my girl, so I beat the shit out of him. Or my girl was dressing like this, so I told her off. I told her to fuck off and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, that level of toxicity and fragility infects everything down to its core. You know, it really shows itself in society today through a lot of the men that we see, especially those that we highlight in media and on social sites and everything like that. We see a lot of it, you know, and it doesn't just affect the women, it affects men as well. You know, when these kind of alpha male types really start to shut out other men because they don't fit a certain criteria. They don't bench as much as they do, or they don't look a certain way, they don't have XYZ kind of job, or, you know, make this amount of money a year. And it's honestly, it comes from a sense of needing approval. And it's so damaging to the mentality of being a man. And it shuts people out and it isolates them. And that isolationism is exactly what's wrong with men today. It's that we put up these barriers and we shut people out because they don't match what we believe is the standard for being a man, especially in today's society. And it's very harmful, not just to the individual man himself, but to the community as a whole. And it infects our society at the deepest level. Now, I feel it's absolutely important for me to reiterate this point, that this conversation isn't coming from a place of judgment. You know, like, I understand that not all men are like this, and I fully recognize that. However, it's enough of the men in society today that have given all of us that bad name. One spoiled apple ruins the bunch kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? And so I just want to point out that if you're not a culprit of these levels of behaviors or these toxic behaviors, then I'm not talking about you. You know what I'm saying? But again, you know, this isn't coming from a place of judgment. It's coming from a place of I want us to do better, you know? And I'm a part of that community as well, and I have my own shortcomings as well. I'm not blind to my own faults. But again, it's one of those traits that I believe that all men should really possess, is the not so much not having faults, but the ability to recognize that you do have them and striving to be better for it, you know, and learning from them. Now, moving on to the next part of our discussion, now that we've been given a good amount of insight from quite a few men in that exist in today's society, now that we see how society perceives men, we can start to break it down and understand what we can do differently in order to change that perspective and make reparations to our reputation within society. Now, I didn't get to ask these same philosophical questions to any of the women in my life, which I feel is a huge mistake. It wasn't for lack of trying, but simply because of a lack of time. I didn't really have the time to ask anybody. But my wife did give me a good amount of insight from her perspective, which I greatly appreciate as well. But she believes that, as well as the toxic and fragile masculinity that we see and that we really highlight in the media and in the people that we choose to idolize and worship, like celebrities and YouTubers and content creators, you know, a lot of these people reflect a lot of the negative aspects of being a man. And it makes it, you know, uncomfortable for women to exist within the same social circles as some of these men. You know, this alpha dog, this alpha male mentality, it's not attractive to a lot of females. And if you are finding the females that are attracted to that, then your taste in females is wrong, at least in her opinion. But I'm not here to speak on, you know, what women should be doing in society, because that's, again, is exactly part of the problem of men in society, is sitting here and telling, you know, women what they can and cannot do. It just never turns out okay for the men in the end. It's not my place to speak on it, and so I will keep my voice, you know, strictly directed towards, you know, my fellow man. That being said, I believe that every man can benefit from having and refining a certain sense of empathy, and putting that empathetic foot forward in many of the interactions that you go through in your life is going to benefit you in the long run. Now, I recognize that a lot of this quote-unquote advice isn't going to be very applicable for certain people within the community, and that's totally okay. This isn't going to be like a one-size-fits-all, because we're all completely different individuals, and to pretend otherwise is just harmful to the diversity and the variety of men that we see in our lives, and the kind of variety that we need to be able to thrive as a community. You know, if we were all cookie-cutter men built the exact same way, then nothing would ever get done. We'd all have the exact same mindset. We'd all have the exact same personalities and behaviors, and it will become incredibly harmful for the community and the society that we live in. That being said, we should strive to celebrate the differences between us rather than breaking each other down because of them. You know, in the conversation that I had with my friend, who placed a lot of the blame on women, you know, we had a very decent and very amicable conversation over the course of a couple of hours. And in the end, despite having to agree to disagree on certain subjects, we were able to come to a very amicable end, you know, to our debate. And I even invited him to come and debate with me again. He is still one of my closest friends to this day, despite the behaviors that he portrays that I don't necessarily agree with. And there are things that I do that he doesn't agree with either, and things that I believe or that I hold myself to that he doesn't agree with as well. But those differences don't set up barriers between us. If anything, it invites us to want to come back and learn more and talk about it, you know? I was able to learn a lot, you know, from his perspective. And a lot of the toxic men in my life, you know, I was able to learn a lot from them as well. I wouldn't have changed it, you know, because it put me exactly where I need to be, which is right here, you know, right now. And I'm forever grateful for that. And it's something that I feel like we could all kind of take away from these experiences, you know. Learning to take the good with the bad and vice versa is going to be such a great strengthening moment for us mentally and emotionally. And I feel like one of our biggest shortcomings as men, especially in the society that we now live in, is that we have this fear of being vulnerable and being emotional because we are seen and perceived as less than because of it. and I hate that for us. You know, I want us to be able to shed the armor and just be. You know what I'm saying? I'm into some really cringy shit, you guys. Like, I watch anime, I like dinosaurs, I like knights. You know, I nerd the fuck out all the time for you guys on stream, in my videos, you know. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, everybody's kind of got their cringy thing that they like, that they feel judged for, you know, that they feel judged for liking. And there's this sentimentality where men are supposed to be this, you know, hardened shell, only there for what we can give, and our values only measured in what people can take from us. And I hate that for us. You know, we are still living beings that seek fulfillment and deserve it. You know, we all deserve that level of happiness, and we should want that for other people as well. And I feel like essentially that right there is the level of empathy that we all can benefit from having. Now, when it comes to what we can do to change the perception of what men are, especially within the confines of society. I know I bring up society a lot, but let's face it, we all live in a society, so let's be absolutely honest with ourselves. But when it comes to change, we meet a lot of opposition. You know, we see it a lot in religions, we see it a lot in our politics, but in the community of men in general, we see a lot of opposition to change, you know? And honestly, I feel like that opposition is also what's harming us as a whole, as a community. Because to fight change is to fight the passing of time. And we can't fight time, you guys. Like, put up your dukes like it's hands on sight, Father Time, you know what I'm saying? Like, we can't physically do it. You know, time only moves in one direction. And everything is going to change with it, whether we want it to or not. And to try to fight that is going to be essentially more harmful than it does any good for anybody. And when it comes to that change, I don't mean like changing other people, you know, like don't go out there and tell other people what you think they should do, because I'm not trying to do that to you guys as well, you know what I'm saying? Like, at least I hope that's not how this is coming across, is me telling you to change your ways. But you should want that change for yourself, you know what I'm saying? In this quote by Aristotle that my older brother shared, it says, "I count him braver who overcomes his desires than him who conquers his enemies, for the hardest victory is over self." And that speaks absolute volumes to the man that can hold himself to that level of virtue and philosophy. Essentially what that quote is reading, or what that quote says, is that power over yourself is greater than power over others. Become the master of yourself, your mentality, your emotions. Because if you don't master these things for yourselves, they're going to become the master of you. And nobody wants to be controlled by their emotions. That's how we get harmful men in society. That's how we get harmful women in society. That's how we get strife, and that's how we lead to struggling, you know? Like, we don't want that for ourselves. So rather than trying to change the world around us and pointing fingers and placing blame, you know, it's time for us to take responsibility for our actions and then change it for the better, you know, for ourselves. We're built to want to change. We can't fight it. We can't resist it. So our best bet is to help it move along so that we can become better for it. To summarize, I believe that we could all benefit from a deep cleansing mentally and emotionally from the confines of society and the social norms, and genuinely just striving to be our better self. Don't set end goals. Set milestones, because your growth should never have an end date. You should always keep growing, keep working on yourself. And when we hold ourselves to that mentality and we strive to want to do it, then it will all become better men in the process. Now, I know this video is much different than the style of content that we're used to, but I do hope you guys enjoyed it anyway, and I hope nobody really took this information in the wrong way, or, you know, took it as me being judgmental or imposing my own ideologies on others, but frankly, it is really just, my personal viewpoints and opinions on a lot of the going-ons in today's society. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I do want this to be more of like an open-ended discussion with the community. So if this gets like a general good, positive review from the community and from my viewers, then I might turn this into like a live streaming event every week, so that we can have like these open discussions rather than just me making videos up on my soapbox spouting all my bullshit. So without further ado, always remember honor and service, glory and sacrifice, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.